Karen marched into the city council chambers waving a stack of papers, shouting that my EV charger was illegal and ruining the community. She didn't know the council had their own stack, federal grant paperwork proving the charger wasn't just legal. It was part of a national green energy initiative she unknowingly supported. And when they read it out loud, Karen's face turned white. I first noticed her taking photos of my garage from across the street. At first, I thought maybe she was just admiring the new installation, but the look on her face wasn't curiosity, it was fury. Her jaw was tight, and her phone didn't stop clicking. That was the first warning. 3 days earlier, I had installed a Level 2 electric vehicle charger, sleek, matte black, mounted neatly next to my garage. It was the final step in converting my home to clean energy. What made it even better? I didn't pay a dime. It was fully covered under a federal green infrastructure grant I applied for months ago. They selected me as a pilot homeowner in our city's clean energy rollout. It felt like progress, like I was part of something meaningful. But Karen didn't see it that way. Later that day, as I was coiling the charger cable, I heard her footsteps charging across the street. She didn't even knock. She just stood at the edge of my driveway with that tone, tight-lipped and sharp. "Is that thing even allowed?" "This is not some tech neighborhood," she said, arms crossed. I explained politely that it was approved by the city under a Department of Energy grant. She scoffed. "You can't just throw these things up without HOA approval. This is a community, not a science fair." I didn't argue. I just nodded and said, "It's all permitted." I went back to winding the cable, thinking it was over. It wasn't. 48 hours later, I received a formal letter from the HOA. It was typed, stamped, and slid under my door. It cited an unauthorized external device altering curb appeal and demanded I cease use of the EV charger until further notice. I was stunned. I'd followed every protocol, permit pulled, documentation submitted. The charger was safer than the original outlet. I emailed the city project manager, who confirmed everything was in order. But the HOA didn't care. Or rather, Karen didn't. A day later, flyers began appearing on mailboxes. "Stop the charging stations before it's too late." In bold font, above a grainy photo of my house, complete with arrows and a fake warning about electrical radiation. I pulled one off my neighbor's box and felt my stomach turn. It wasn't just about my charger anymore. Karen had declared war. I tried to stay calm. The charger hummed quietly every night, topping off my car while I cooked dinner. It wasn't hurting anyone. But her Facebook posts started gaining traction. She accused me of endangering the community's children and installing high-voltage industrial equipment without oversight. People started watching me from their windows. The street felt colder. The next Friday, I received an email from the HOA board. My case had been escalated. Karen had filed a formal petition to present her complaints at the next city council meeting. It would be public. I clicked the attachment. Her complaint ran 4 pages long. Words like noncompliance, hazard, violation. My name mentioned 14 times. She was framing me as a threat. But the last sentence is what hit me hardest. "He will be present to respond to this matter before the city council." The community deserves answers. She didn't just want my charger gone. She wanted to humiliate me in front of the whole town. The next morning, I found a note taped to my front door. No envelope. Just 5 words. "See you at City Council." The note on my door stayed there longer than I'd like to admit. I must have walked past it 6 times before finally peeling it off and reading it again. "See you at City Council." 5 words. But it felt like a threat dressed in fake politeness. I didn't respond. I didn't knock on her door. What was there to say? Karen was already campaigning in her own way, and she had momentum. By Sunday morning, her Facebook post was everywhere in the local groups. A selfie of her frowning, pointing at my house in the background, and a caption that read, "They want to change our neighborhood, one charger at a time." Not on my watch. I almost laughed. Almost. But the comments told a different story. Dozens of them. Some defending her. Some mocking her. But most just tagging other people and saying things like, "Is this about the electric guy on Alder Lane?" That would be me. Monday afternoon, I received a call from a local reporter. She said she was doing a piece for the city blog, covering a growing dispute between a resident and the HOA regarding new energy tech. I asked how she even knew about it. She paused, then said, Karen contacted us directly. By Tuesday, I was in the news. A short video ran on the local channel, just a minute-long segment showing a zoomed-in shot of my garage, the charger glowing faintly at dusk, and a soundbite from Karen saying, "We just want to preserve our way of life." They never aired my interview. Not even a quote. It didn't matter how quiet the charger was, or that it hadn't disrupted anything. What mattered was that Karen had turned it into a symbol. And in our neighborhood, symbols spread fast. Some neighbors stopped waving. A few even crossed the street when I walked my dog. Others offered quiet support, short texts saying, "Sorry you're dealing with this," or "We know she's overreacting," but no one wanted to say it out loud. Not where she could hear. I knew what I had to do. I gathered every document I had, the grant approval letter, the city inspection sign-off, the utility statement showing reduced energy use. I made copies and walked them over to the council liaison's office. The woman at the desk looked confused. "You're here for the complaint on Alder Lane, right?" she asked, flipping through a file. "You're the homeowner with the federally funded unit?" I nodded. She smiled. "This is already registered with us. You're part of the pilot program. So why was this even a problem?" I left the office with a strange mix of confidence and dread. I had the facts, the law, the backing of a federal program. But Karen had the story. And in public opinion, stories often win. 2 days later, I received the official packet, a summons to appear before the city council in a public hearing scheduled for Thursday night. Karen would be presenting her petition. I would have 5 minutes to respond. 5 minutes to justify a silent box mounted on my garage. The morning of the hearing, I found another flyer on my windshield. Folded, tucked under my wiper blade. No name on it, but I knew who it came from. What starts with one charger will end with satellite dishes, antennas, solar panels, and chaos. My hands were shaking by the time I finished reading it. But something shifted inside me that day. I stopped feeling afraid. Karen wanted a spectacle. I would give her clarity. Not rage, not drama, just the truth. Because for the first time in this whole ordeal, I wasn't embarrassed. I was done hiding. I had nothing to apologize for. That night, as I pulled up to City Hall, the parking lot was already full. I saw familiar faces, unfamiliar ones too. A few reporters, camera crews, a line of people waiting to enter. I stepped out of my car. The lights above the courthouse made everything look colder, sharper. Karen was already there, wearing a red blazer, holding a thick folder, surrounded by 3 other people from the HOA. She didn't even glance at me, but I looked right at her. And for the first time in weeks, I wasn't the one nervous, because I knew something she didn't. Everything she was about to challenge had already been approved by the very people she was trying to convince. And to the council, they had all the paperwork. I just had to show up and let the truth speak louder than the noise. The chamber was more crowded than I expected. Rows of folding chairs filled the back of the room, and people stood along the walls. Phones were out, filming. You could feel it in the air. Everyone was waiting for something to happen. And for Karen, this was her stage. She was already at the front of the room, clutching her folder like it was a legal case. When the council chair called the session to order, Karen practically leapt forward. They gave her the floor. She didn't waste a second. "This isn't just about one charger," she began, her voice ringing through the room. "It's about preserving the character of our community. We are a traditional neighborhood. We follow rules. We submit plans. We vote on changes. But this," she pointed toward me without saying my name, "this was forced on us." People nodded. A few murmured in agreement. Others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Karen flipped open her folder and started reading complaints. Noise, appearance, radiation, electromagnetic interference. She had printouts from articles, some barely credible, all marked with highlighter. "I'm not against clean energy," she said, glancing at cameras, "but there's a process." And this man ignored it. I stayed quiet. My documents were in a folder on my lap. I didn't need to raise my voice. She was doing enough of that for both of us. Then came the moment that shifted everything. A council member leaned forward. He tapped his mic and asked, "Can you clarify what rule you believe was broken?" Karen froze for a split second, then replied, "The HOA wasn't consulted. No community vote. No design approval. Another council member spoke up. But if the installation was permitted through the city's green infrastructure pilot, wouldn't it supersede HOA procedural review? She stammered. But it's still our neighborhood. You can't just override everything because of a federal grant. That's when the council chair nodded to a staff member. He stepped forward and handed a folder to the panel. They flipped through the pages. This is the grant file, the chair announced, for the Department of Energy's Clean Living Initiative. This resident, he motioned to me, was pre-approved in coordination with the city and selected from a pool of applicants. Karen's face tightened. And interestingly, the council chair continued, turning a page. We have attached here a community survey from 6 months ago, collecting input for energy projects in the neighborhood. He held it up. Among the supporters listed for this pilot, Karen Dunley. There was a pause in the room, a beat of silence so thick you could hear a chair creak in the back. Karen blinked fast. I never supported this, she said, stepping forward. It's your name, your address. You signed the survey supporting green tech installations in residential zones, the chair replied. This EV charger was installed based on that community backing. Yes. A few people laughed. Not cruelly, more in disbelief. Karen stepped back, her face pale. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. One of the council members leaned toward his mic. Ma'am, this charger meets all city codes. It's quieter than a refrigerator and operates at lower voltage than your microwave. This hearing is a waste of city time. She turned, looked around the room as if someone would stand with her. No one did. Then, calmly, they turned to me. Do you have anything to add? I stood up, holding my papers, but I didn't even have to open them. Everything you've said confirms what I already knew. I just want to charge my car at home. I followed the rules. That's all. They nodded. That was it. No vote needed. No further discussion. The complaint was dismissed. Karen stayed frozen in her seat while I walked out. No cameras followed me. No reporters swarmed. I stepped into the night, into the cool air, and let out the breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Behind me, the council adjourned. Inside, Karen was still sitting there, silent. For the first time since this started, it wasn't my charger under a spotlight. It was her. The next morning felt different. For the first time in weeks, I opened my garage without checking over my shoulder. The charger sat there quietly, glowing like always, waiting for me to plug in. But now it wasn't a target. It was proof that the truth had finally cut through the noise. I got a text from my neighbor, James, the kind of guy who usually kept to himself. It just said, "Watched the stream last night. Good on you for standing up." A minute later came another. "If you ever need someone at the next HOA meeting, I'll come." That one hit me harder than I expected. I wasn't trying to win a war. I just didn't want to be bullied. But standing up for yourself, especially in public with cameras and pressure and whispers behind closed doors, can feel like a lonely thing. Now it didn't feel so lonely. Later that afternoon, a reporter actually called to apologize. She said their segment had been rushed and that they'd failed to present the full story. She asked if I'd be willing to do a follow-up. I declined. This wasn't about going viral or getting the last word. It was about my home. But not everyone had moved on. Around 3 p.m., I saw Karen outside her house, clipping her hedges with more force than precision. She wouldn't look at me. I didn't expect her to. Her campaign had backfired, and she'd been exposed by her own signature. I didn't feel victorious, just relieved. What surprised me most was what happened next. That weekend, the HOA held an emergency meeting, not about me, but about her. Multiple homeowners had requested an internal review of how she'd used her position. Misuse of HOA resources, falsified community claims, unauthorized distribution of flyers. Apparently, people were more fed up than I realized. She didn't show up to that meeting. But I did. For the first time, I walked into the HOA clubhouse with my head up. Some people smiled at me. Others nodded. Even those who hadn't taken a side before now saw what she had tried to do. I didn't speak at the meeting. I didn't need to. The room was already speaking for me. One neighbor stood up and said, "I may not have an electric car, but I believe in fairness. And we can't have people weaponizing the HOA just because they don't like change." Another added, "This isn't about one charger. It's about how one person tried to control the whole street. Eventually, a vote was called. Karen would be suspended from the HOA board for 6 months, pending further review. It passed with a wide margin. No cheering, no shouting, just quiet, collective agreement that enough was enough. When I walked back home that night, the street looked the same. The homes hadn't changed. The trees still rustled in the wind. But something underneath had shifted. I wasn't just the guy with the charger anymore. I was part of the neighborhood in a way I hadn't been before. The following week, two different neighbors approached me with questions. One asked where I'd applied for the grant, and the other asked about solar panels. That was the moment I realized Karen had accidentally done something she never intended. She made people curious, not afraid, not hostile, curious. And curiosity is the beginning of progress. I sent them both the link to the grant portal, shared my paperwork, told them what I wish someone had told me when I started, how the process worked, what to expect, what to avoid. A month ago, I was just trying to plug in my car without starting a neighborhood feud. Now, I was helping others do the same. The irony? Karen's biggest fear was that my charger would lead to change on the street. She was right, but not the kind she expected. It wasn't chaos or industrial noise or falling property values. It was quiet change, thoughtful, measured, one family at a time asking, what if we upgraded too? And now that the fear was gone, it didn't look so scary anymore. A month passed. The charger was still there, quiet as ever. No more anonymous notes. No more flyers. No more cameras. What once felt like a battleground now felt like home again. One morning, while I was walking my dog, I noticed something strange outside Karen's house. A truck from the local hardware store was parked in her driveway. Two workers were unloading a pallet with something long, metal, and boxy. I slowed down, pretending to check my phone. It was a level 2 EV charger. For a second, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe she ordered the wrong item. Maybe it was for a cousin or a friend. But the technician walked right up to her garage and started taking measurements. Karen stood at the front door, arms folded, expression unreadable. She saw me. I raised my eyebrows, not to mock her, not even sarcastically. Just surprise. Maybe even a little curiosity. She looked away. That evening, I saw the unit mounted to her wall, just like mine. A sleek silver box with a glowing light. Same model. Same setup. I didn't say anything, and she didn't either. But she knew that I knew. The whole street probably did. Change has a strange way of creeping in, even through the cracks of resistance. Maybe it was the council hearing. Maybe it was her board suspension. Or maybe, just maybe, it was seeing her neighbors embrace the very thing she tried so hard to shut down. By the end of the month, 3 more homes had EV chargers installed. 2 others were researching solar programs. The grant portal I had shared was now being forwarded in group chats and neighborhood forums. People were asking real questions about energy, efficiency, cost, sustainability. Not because they were told to, because they wanted to. At the next HOA meeting, something remarkable happened. The interim board chair proposed an amendment. Instead of resisting new energy infrastructure, the HOA would establish a review panel to support homeowners interested in eco-friendly upgrades. Not just allow them, assist them. The motion passed unanimously. After the meeting, I stood near the back, folding my notes. A woman I hadn't spoken to before approached me. Gray hair, warm eyes, a quiet voice. You know, she said, you didn't just install a charger. You started something. I smiled. Honestly, I just wanted to charge my car without getting yelled at. She chuckled. Sometimes that's all it takes. One small thing that makes people rethink everything. As I walked back home that night, the street lights flickered on one by one. I noticed something new. Not the hardware, not the cables, but the conversations. People who'd never spoken to each other before were now trading advice about rebate forms and installation timelines. The fear Karen had stirred had burned itself out. In its place, there was curiosity, connection, even hope. The transformation hadn't come from arguments or anger. It came from truth, from showing up, from staying calm when it would have been easier to scream, from trusting that the facts would win, even when it felt like the crowd wouldn't listen. And maybe in some quiet way, Karen realized that too. A week later, I found a small envelope tucked inside my mailbox. No name, just a single sheet of paper. It read, "I still don't agree with how it started, but I understand now why it matters. I didn't need a signature to know who wrote it." That was the last I heard from her. But I didn't need more. This wasn't a story about revenge or about proving someone wrong. It was about how neighborhoods change, sometimes kicking and screaming, sometimes quietly, and how one charger placed in one driveway could unlock something bigger than any of us expected. Not just a battery, not just a car, but a better way forward.